as more and more people are shaking their heads with incredulity as the Labour Party are sucking up to Trump and desperately trying to get an American trade deal. One Labour MP, Tim Rocker, the MP for Macclesfield, has come out explaining why we need to get back closer to the EU. And we have to hope that there are more MPs in the Labour Party feeling like Tim Rocker does, because at the moment Keir Starmer is swimming against the tide, because only 14% of the country want to do a deal with Donald Trump, and by far the biggest majority want to get back closer to the EU. Now, post-Brexit Britain is bending over backwards to appease Donald Trump, a man who embodies white male supremacy, openly boasts about grabbing women by the pussy, and treats both people and nations as things to be owned. Trump's approach to culture, trade and geopolitics mirrors his attitude towards women: domination, control, and a belief that everything should be shaped around his desires. This isn't just authoritarianism, it's textbook narcissistic abuse. The UK left a pragmatic, rules-based partnership with the EU only to become a supplicant to a man who sees relationships, whether personal or international, as tools for his own gain. The so-called freedom Brexiteers wanted has turned into subservience to an egotistical strongman.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about inflation. We left it at 2%. It is now twice what the OBR forecast when we were in government. The fact is, his decisions have made our economy fragile, just as we face global trade wars. In November, I urged him to seize the draft US trade deal Conservatives negotiated. Instead, Mr. Speaker, he lost our most experienced trade negotiator. It's no wonder he can't get a tariff deal for British cars. On this side of the House, we secured investments for that industry: £600 million from BMW, £2 billion from Nissan, £4 billion from Jaguar Land Rover. Labour's record is a car industry in crisis, even before tariffs. There are 25,000 more jobs now at risk. He says he's preparing for eventualities. Can the Prime Minister tell us exactly what he is doing to protect the British car industry from his failure to negotiate?
We're taking a calm, pragmatic approach and keeping our feet on the ground. There are constructive talks that are ongoing on a wider economic prosperity deal with the US. That is really important at this moment. We are working with all sectors that are likely to be impacted, and we're guided by our national interest at all times. And that's why we've said we won't rule anything out. But it is important at a moment like this that we don't have knee-jerk reactions, that we are actually cool-headed about this, and that's why we won't rule anything out. But she must be. She's the Trade Secretary. She was the Trade Secretary, Mr. Speaker, who failed to get a trade deal with the US.
Mr. Speaker, today the Trump administration will announce new tariffs that will hurt working people in the US and around the world. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that at a time when big tech has grown fat by corrupting our politics and preying on young people, that the wrong approach would be to pander to his bullying tactics and to tech millionaires in his imperial court by cutting the digital services tax? Can he assure the public that the poorest won't get cuts while the richest get a free ride?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank her for raising this. It is an important issue, and there are issues in relation to Northern Ireland in particular that we have to deal with very carefully. We will, Mr. Speaker, always put the national interest first, and that's why I'm pleased that talks are ongoing and they're constructive talks. I do believe that a trade war is in nobody's interest, and all of the sectors and industries impacted are of the same view. So we'll continue to make that progress in the national interest.
The Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the earlier remarks of the Prime Minister, particularly about Myanmar and Thailand? And can I support the aid that is going, and hope that despite the budget cuts we can be as generous as possible because of the humanitarian crisis there? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has shown commendable leadership over Ukraine with his plan for a military coalition of the willing against Putin. Will he now provide similar leadership with an economic coalition of the willing against Trump's tariffs for free trade, so we can avoid a global trade war and a global recession?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think every week he tries to tempt me to make what I think is a false choice between our relationship with the US and our relationship with other countries, particularly Europe. I think that's the wrong choice on defence, on security and intelligence, for reasons that we've rehearsed across this chamber. I also think it's wrong on trade and the economy. We have a good deal of trade, a balanced trade relationship with the US, and I believe that our interests are best served by calmly trying to secure a deal which is in our national interest, whilst at the same time preparing and leaving all options on the table.
Sir Ed Davey.
Minister's reply. I hope he is able to cut a deal, but I increasingly fear that the deal won't be good enough to avoid a global trade war. That's why I think one of the options must be to work with our European allies, our Commonwealth allies and others, because we don't tackle Trump's tariffs. We could be saying goodbye to free trade for a generation. Mr. Speaker, if I may turn to a domestic matter now. 3 years ago, the American private equity firm KKR bought a 25% stake in Northumbrian Water. Since then, people across the North East have seen their water bills soar, whilst in last year alone, Northumbrian Water has dumped nearly 1 million tonnes of raw sewage into Durham's Whitburn Coast Conservation Area. KKR are now poised to buy into Thames Water because ministers have ruled out a special administration regime. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that Thames Water will not be allowed to repeat the same trick of putting up bills and dumping raw sewage at the same time? They allowed it, he shouldn't.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to his comments at the beginning of the question, I really do think it's not sensible to say the first response should be to jump in to a trade war with the US. That cannot be the first response of the United Kingdom, and I will resist his urgings to do that. In relation to water, he's absolutely right to point out the appalling record on water of the party opposite, just like your record on everything was appalling, and that's why I'm really pleased that we've passed the Water Act already to take the necessary measures, but we will go further.
David Egan.
Yesterday, the Work and Pension Select Committee visited Manchester, where we saw the power of devolution in action, in this case helping people find work. So with just 5 percentage points separating Labour and Conservative...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will know that many in the House will be assuaged by his suggestion that he will act in the national interest in relation to tariffs. But most won't have considered that in acting in the national interest, what occurs in Northern Ireland is no longer solely in his control. He knows that exports from Northern Ireland are UK exports, rightly so. Yet imports to Northern Ireland could lay at the consequence of EU retaliatory action. In keeping all of his options open, now we have to live in a world with the consequences of the last government with his support. Will he indicate that he is prepared to take steps to either exempt Northern Ireland from EU action or take retaliatory action if they do not?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this issue, which is of real importance to his constituents and everybody in Northern Ireland? It is a very serious issue. That's why we need to be calm and pragmatic. And I think that's what workers and businesses in Northern Ireland would want to see from this government at a time like this. We are, as you would expect, looking carefully at the details of any retaliatory tariffs announced by the EU, if they are, and what impact they might have on businesses. As he knows, where goods do not enter the EU, then businesses can claim a full reimbursement of any EU duties paid. But I reassure, in the interests of Northern Ireland, at the forefront of our decisions, and he may want to know that this morning the Business Secretary spoke to the Northern Ireland Executive because this is a serious issue and we need to work together to resolve it in the interests of everybody in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has spoken very movingly and with genuine sincerity and affection about his time as a young man in the Langdale Valley and the Lake District in my constituency and how that helped to shape him. So I wonder if he's aware that the hill farmers who maintain those stunning landscapes in the lakes and elsewhere will be earning on average significantly less or barely half the national minimum wage due to cuts in their income, despite the fact they provide the backdrop to the remarkably important tourism economy. So would you agree to meet with me and upland farmers in the lakes and the dales so that we can design a scheme together to end this poverty and equip our hill farmers to produce food and protect our epic landscapes for generations to come?
Yeah. Minister. He and I share a love of the Lake District. And we still go back there with our children now. This is a serious issue, obviously, and that's why we've put a record amount into farming at the budget, but also set out our roadmap. But I'll happily make sure that he gets a meeting with the relevant minister to go through that and to take...
One of my pet cows, Black Beauty, had her calf this morning, and I've named her Velvet. Here she is, just getting to learn her way around. Hope you enjoyed the video. Do comment below, let me know what you think. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing.